Christina's car was found at the bottom of the Kern River, but she wasn't. Beneath the fast-moving currents of the Kern, a car lay quietly submerged, like a secret buried deep underwater. When divers reached the vehicle, they touched cold steel. The windows were shattered. The driver's seat was empty. Christina Murphy, a dedicated nurse, vanished in the summer of 2024, and from that moment on, no one ever saw her again. Police claimed the water was too dangerous to recover the car right away, but her friends didn't buy it. They knocked on every office door begging for answers. In the end, it wasn't law enforcement who made the discovery. It was a private dive team, following the clues, who finally found Christina's car. But the discovery only raised more questions than it answered. Why were the windows broken? Why was no one inside? And what really happened to Christina on the road that led her to that river? Christina Murphy wasn't a household name, but in the small community where she lived, everybody knew who she was. At 32, Christina worked as a nurse at a local clinic, known for her radiant smile and the gentle way she cared for her patients. People would say that even during the longest shifts, when the cold fluorescent lights wore everyone down, Christina still carried a quiet energy, as if she had a little extra light inside her. She was born and raised in a working-class family in California. Growing up, she dreamed of becoming a teacher, but after watching her aunt battle a terminal illness, Christina changed paths, choosing nursing instead. It was a tough, often thankless profession, but it was where she felt most alive. Her closest friends called her the caretaker, not just because of her job, but because she was always the one looking out for others. Christina lived simply: weekend picnics at the park, cozy nights with friends in her small apartment, and her morning ritual: iced black coffee, always. Everyone around her believed she had a bright future ahead. She'd just been offered a higher-paying job and was even thinking about buying her first home. But beneath all that warmth, there were quiet struggles. Lately, Christina had confided in a close friend that she felt tired of all the invisible pressure, from money stress to the emotional weight of a recent breakup. These confessions came and went like passing clouds. Nothing seemed serious enough to worry about. But when she disappeared, every little detail suddenly mattered. Every memory became a clue. On the night of July 22nd, 2024, Christina vanished. And the strange thing was, no one could remember exactly when they last saw her. There was something about Christina that even her closest friends didn't fully realize. Something they only began to talk about after she was gone. As word spread that Christina was missing, her neighborhood reeled. This wasn't just another missing person case. This was someone they knew. Patients she had cared for remembered the way she'd held their hands through pain. Her coworkers said she always volunteered for the overnight shifts so others could go home to their families. But it was Christina's closest friends who were hit the hardest, especially two fellow nurses, Stephanie and Cherish. They'd been through everything together: long shifts, tough nights, and late dinners in tiny kitchens. To them, Christina wasn't just a friend, she was family. So when Christina didn't show up for their usual meetup, they knew something was wrong. People miss calls, forget texts, but Christina didn't just disappear without a word. Stephanie remembers calling her phone dozens of times only to hear the cold, mechanical voicemail. "I felt this strange feeling in my chest," she said, "like I knew things would never be normal again." The next day, Stephanie and Cherish drove along Christina's usual route to work, hoping to find anything: a bag, a skid mark, a trace. And then, near the Kern River, something made their hearts sink. Tire marks, right at the edge of the fast-moving river. And a car, barely visible beneath the water's surface. One that looked a lot like Christina's. They called the police, hoping for immediate action. But the response they got was hesitation. That summer, the Kern River was especially dangerous. High waters, rapid currents, and serious risk. Authorities said it wasn't safe to recover the car yet. To Christina's friends, that answer felt like a punch to the chest. Waiting wasn't an option. Their friend could be down there. Helplessness turned into anger. These two nurses, once just regular healthcare workers, suddenly became investigators. They made calls, pleaded for help, and eventually reached out to private search teams. When Christina's car was finally spotted beneath the Kern River, hope and despair collided. Because in that moment, the biggest question of all echoed louder than ever. If Christina wasn't in the car, then where was she? July 22nd, 2024. Kern County was drenched in summer sun, and like any other day, Christina Murphy left her home. She sent a few texts to friends, saying she'd see them after the weekend. Just a few casual words. Nothing strange, nothing alarming. But they would be the last messages anyone ever received from her. When Christina didn't come home that night, her friends first assumed she might have stayed somewhere to rest. But by the next morning, with no calls, no texts, and no signs of her, worry began to spread. One close friend recalled, "Christina was never silent like that. Even at her busiest, she would always send a quick message." Kern County deputies were notified, and a missing person report was filed. At first, police treated the case with caution but not urgency, suggesting that Christina may have taken off for a few days by choice. But to her loved ones, that theory made no sense. Christina had just started a new job. She was looking at houses. There was no reason for her to disappear without a word. That night, Cherish and Stephanie drove along Highway 178, the winding road that traces the Kern River. They peered down into the swirling white water. "It felt strange," Cherish later said, "like the river was hiding something." Then, at a sharp curve in the road, they noticed faint tire tracks leading down toward the water's edge. Heart-pounding, they stopped the car. Shining their flashlights into the murky current, they saw something. They weren't sure what, but a glimmer, a reflection. The faint shape of a car submerged deep below. One question filled their minds. Was that Christina's car? And if it was, where was she? When Cherish and Stephanie reported the sighting to police, they believed it would trigger an immediate search and recovery, but what they got in return was silence and excuses. Kern County authorities confirmed there was, in fact, a vehicle beneath the surface, near the exact location the women had pointed out, but they emphasized the Kern River was in one of its most dangerous states: high water, strong currents, near zero visibility. According to them, attempting recovery was simply too risky for the dive team. To Christina's friends, that response felt like a slap in the face. The idea that her car, possibly with her inside, was sitting just meters away, yet left untouched, was unbearable. Stephanie choked up. If it was one of their own, would they just leave the car there? For days, the vehicle remained submerged in the roaring river. Police said they would act when conditions were safer, but with each passing day, hope of finding Christina alive slipped further away. Along the riverbank, Cherish lit candles and prayed, while hot winds lifted a photo of Christina's smiling face into the air. As authorities stepped back, the community stepped in. Christina's friends began reaching out to private dive teams for help. Word spread quickly to Adventures with Purpose, a renowned group known for solving cold cases underwater. Dubbed the Deep Sea Detectives, AWP agreed to come to Kern River. When they arrived, dozens of locals gathered along the shoreline. Everyone watched in silence as the divers, dressed in full gear and carrying sonar and underwater cameras, plunged into the raging current. Within hours, they confirmed it. The car belonged to Christina. The crowd gasped. It was a moment of hope and of dread, because whatever truth the car held might be the one nobody wanted to face. When the divers shined their lights into the driver's seat, everyone braced to see Christina inside. But the seat was empty, and the driver's window had been shattered. As the Adventures with Purpose team approached the vehicle, every eye on shore followed. Waterproof cameras recorded every second. The roar of the river echoed the pounding hearts of those waiting above. The first images were chilling. The driver's side window was completely blown out. River water swirled violently through the car's interior, spinning around the seats. In the driver's seat, where Christina should have been, there was nothing but broken glass and a few floating items. The car doors were closed, but the missing window made the scene all the more confusing. It raised a storm of questions. If Christina had been inside, why wasn't her body found? If she'd driven into the river alone, how did the window shatter before the entire structure gave way? And if someone else had been with her, where were they? Divers reported to police that the vehicle was indeed Christina's, but no body was found inside. As protocol required, the site was handed over to law enforcement, now considered a potential crime scene. But from that moment forward, control returned to the authorities. And with it, a heavy silence blanketed the community. At first, Christina's loved ones clung to hope. At least the car had been found. Maybe answers would follow. But in the days that came, that hope turned to frustration. Police released no updates, no autopsy, no press conferences. Not even a straight answer to the question, was Christina in the car when it entered the water? Doubt began to spread. Was law enforcement hiding something, or were they simply overwhelmed and letting the case fall through the cracks? In prayer circles at local churches, whispers grew louder. If she were a white woman from another part of town, would they have acted faster? That question echoed beyond Kern County, spreading online, across social media. Christina was no longer just a missing woman. She had become a symbol of what it feels like to be forgotten. When justice moves so slowly, it starts to feel like it may never come at all. The car beneath the water was supposed to solve the mystery, but instead it opened a door to even more questions. And in the statements that followed, contradictions began to emerge. After Christina's car was found at the bottom of the Kern River, many believed the truth would finally come to light. But instead of answers, contradictions began to surface. Several witnesses claimed they'd seen Christina driving along Highway 178 that afternoon. One said they spotted a silver sedan pulled over on the roadside, the door slightly open, though they couldn't say for sure if it was hers. Another said they saw Christina at a small gas station just hours before she vanished. The accounts were scattered, inconsistent, and only deepened the mystery. Meanwhile, Christina's phone records, according to close friends, indicated her last signal pinged near Lake Isabella, not far from where her car was found. Yet police never released any official data, fueling suspicions that something critical was being kept from the public. Christina's friends also began recalling strange little details. Just days before she went missing, she'd mentioned feeling like someone was following her during her late-night drives home. When Stephanie asked more, Christina had just laughed it off. Probably her imagination, she said. But now those offhand remarks felt haunting. Even the police explanations didn't line up. On one hand, they suggested Christina might have lost control and plunged into the river. On the other, they admitted the shattered window didn't look like a typical crash pattern. And if the car had been swept away by the current, why weren't there clear skid marks or signs of impact on the road? Gradually, this stopped feeling like a simple accident and started to resemble something far more complicated. As the days dragged on with no clear answers, the community began to speculate. Had Christina met someone on the road? Was someone else in the car with her? Or worse, did someone want her gone? And then, suddenly, a single, seemingly minor detail emerged. A detail that would change the course of the entire investigation. The traffic camera wasn't recording that night. What haunted Christina's friends most was the existence of traffic cameras along Highway 178. The road is notoriously dangerous, lined with cameras to monitor accidents and conditions. So, logically, if Christina drove that stretch on July 22nd, at least one camera should have captured her car. But when her friends pressed police for the footage, the response was hard to believe. The camera closest to where Christina's car was found had malfunctioned that very night. All recordings from that 24-hour period were missing. Just black screens where there should have been evidence. To the community, this wasn't just coincidence anymore. How does the camera break down on the exact night Christina drove past? Was it a glitch? Or did someone not want that footage to exist? One local said in frustration. Whispers began to spread. Someone had tampered with the evidence. And just as tensions were peaking, a strange new detail emerged from a local resident. Marlene, who lived on a nearby farm, recalled hearing car engines late on the night Christina disappeared. It wasn't just one vehicle passing by, she said. It sounded like two cars, starting, stopping, then revving up again. That account sent chills through Christina's friends. If there were two cars, who else was out there with her, and why? Police neither confirmed nor denied the story, but the theories swirling around the community grew darker. Some believed Christina had been forced off the road. Others thought the entire crash scene was staged to mislead. There were even rumors of a man seen lurking around Lake Isabella late at night, someone police had never questioned. Every small clue, every whispered theory, it all layered mystery upon mystery. Christina was no longer just a missing woman. She had become the center of a much larger question about trust and justice. And just when it seemed all eyes were fixed on the car and the river, a new face emerged, someone no one had suspected, who suddenly became the investigation's first person of interest. As the community spiraled deeper into rumors and unanswered questions, one name suddenly surfaced. Not a stranger, but someone Christina had known. A man she once worked with on a local health outreach project. Friends recalled that just weeks before she vanished, Christina had confided something unsettling. The man had started showing up in unexpected places, in the hospital parking lot, at her regular coffee shop, even at her gym. When her friends asked about it, Christina brushed it off, said it was probably just coincidence. But now, when those memories are pieced together, the story feels more like a warning. When police were questioned about the man, their response was brief. He had been interviewed and ruled out, but no public report was released, and no one knew what evidence cleared him. For Christina's loved ones, that wasn't good enough. Another colleague remembered the way he looked at Christina. It was strange, like something he never let go of. In the tight-knit community, suspicion grew fast. People began to look at him differently, even though no solid proof existed. What disturbed them even more, on the very night Christina disappeared, a witness reported seeing a vehicle matching his near the stretch of road by the Kern River. Police didn't confirm it. Was this a crucial detail being overlooked or deliberately ignored? For Christina's friends, fear gave way to suspicion. They started to ask themselves, had she really vanished in a tragic accident, or had someone made her disappear? And then came a discovery that shifted everything, a detail powerful enough to turn this man from a familiar face into a prime suspect, a criminal past no one had known about. In the weeks after Christina's car was pulled from the river, the community waited anxiously for updates, but the silence dragged on. So people started digging on their own. And that's when a chilling truth came out. The man who had been hanging around Christina, the unofficial suspect, had a criminal record. According to public records, he'd been arrested years earlier for harassment. The charges had been minor, quietly resolved, and quickly forgotten. But once the news broke, every eye turned to him. Suddenly, this wasn't just a hazy puzzle anymore. The picture was becoming sharp and disturbing. Christina's friends now saw everything differently, the way he stared at her too long, the coincidental appearances that happened too often, and how, after her disappearance, he completely vanished from the community. It's like he knew people would start asking questions, Stephanie whispered. Police again insisted they had investigated and found no evidence linking him to the case. But they refused to answer basic questions. Where was he on the night of July 22nd? Had they reviewed his phone data, GPS history? Frustration in the community began to boil over. For many, this wasn't just about Christina anymore. It became a larger reckoning with justice and bias. If Christina were a white woman living in a wealthy neighborhood, would they have dismissed a suspect this easily? That question echoed in prayer circles, on social media, and in quiet headlines from independent news outlets. And every time police stayed silent, suspicion only grew. Was this man truly innocent? Simply the wrong face at the wrong time? Or worse, was something being hidden, allowing a potential suspect to walk free? That unanswered question cast a darker shadow over everything. Christina was still missing. Her car, still empty, gave no real answers. And now, the entire story seemed wrapped in a new layer of unease, centered around one man the community couldn't stop looking at. But just as every eye turned toward him, another twist emerged, one that shook all previous theories, and sent the community's fragile faith into free fall. Just as the entire community had begun to focus on the familiar man, the unexpected suspect from Christina's past, a new revelation sent the story spiraling in a different direction. A group of volunteers, mostly Christina's close friends, had hired a private sonar team to rescan the area around where her car was found. Their hope was simple. Maybe they could locate her missing phone or any personal item. But what they discovered changed everything. A second set of tire tracks, running parallel to Christina's, appeared just before the slope leading into the river. According to the sonar experts, the tread pattern didn't match the vehicle belonging to the initial suspect. These tracks came from a different type of vehicle, possibly an SUV or a pickup truck. And with that, a new question shattered the narrative. Was there a third person? Someone who had never even been on the radar? The revelation rocked the community. Just when everyone had started to believe the familiar man was behind it all, doubt crept in. If there was another vehicle, then who was driving it? And what was their connection to Christina? But what disturbed people most wasn't the discovery itself. It was the police response. When the local press reported on the tire tracks, police refused to confirm the information, calling it unverified. To Christina's friends, that was just another wall. Every time we uncover something, Cherish said bitterly, the police dismiss it or look the other way. At this point, the community's suspicion wasn't just aimed at one man. It began to include the very people meant to be solving the case, and whatever fragile trust was left began to break. But that wasn't the end. Another discovery, not about the car, but about Christina's private life, would throw every previous theory into question. While the community tried to process the news of a second vehicle, another revelation emerged, one that made the case even harder to untangle. While combing through Christina's background, an independent journalist uncovered something few expected. Christina had once registered for a support group, a private network for women dealing with stalking or harassment. The group operated discreetly. None of her close friends even knew she'd been part of it. For many, the news was shocking. The Christina they knew was upbeat, strong, and open. But now, it seemed she had been quietly carrying a fear she never shared. The question quickly turned. Had Christina known she was in danger, and was she reaching out for help? It didn't stop there. A colleague came forward and revealed that just days before she vanished, Christina had mentioned feeling like she was being followed on her late-night drive home. It echoed earlier accounts, but now, placed alongside the support group discovery, it became something far more chilling. The community split. Some were certain Christina had fallen victim to a persistent stalker, someone who may have made her disappear, but others began to question. If Christina knew something was wrong, why didn't she speak up more clearly? Could there be a part of her life that no one truly knew? And in that moment, belief itself began to unravel. Every theory built up until now, the accident, the known suspect, the second vehicle, all seemed fragile. Because the center of this mystery wasn't just the empty car in the river, it was Christina herself. A woman both resilient and possibly harboring secrets no one ever saw. A new question took over. Were these secrets the key to understanding what happened that night? Or were they simply fragments of a deeper story, pulled into the spotlight out of desperation, with no real connection to the moment she vanished? One thing became clear: the community no longer believed in a single theory. They had fallen into a spiral of uncertainty where every possibility was terrifying. And the truth, if it even exists, felt more distant than ever. And with every theory falling apart, only one fact remains undeniable. Christina is still missing. That silence, colder than the waters of the Kern River, is the deepest wound of all. Months passed, then more months, but Christina Murphy never came home. Her car had been pulled from the Kern River. The scene had been processed. But the one question that mattered most was never answered. Where is Christina? No detailed report was ever released. No autopsy results. No explanation for the shattered window. No confirmation of a suspect. Christina's family and friends were left to piece together clues, not from law enforcement, but from news articles and strangers online. At prayer vigils in church halls, candles flickered as Christina's face appeared on screens overhead, but the air was thick with silence. One friend, barely holding back tears, said, "We're not asking for promises, we just want the truth, but even that still hasn't come." That pain isn't just Christina's family's to bear. It echoes throughout the Black community in California, where too many missing cases go ignored, brushed aside, or treated like an afterthought. Christina, a kind, devoted Black nurse, became a symbol of what it feels like to be forgotten by the very system meant to protect you. On social media, the hashtag began to spread, "Justice for Christina." But like so many cases before hers, the headlines faded, the spotlight dimmed, and to her community, that silence, that slow, quiet forgetting, was more painful than the police's inaction. But to this day, Christina's friends still return to the Kern River to remind the world, if no one is held accountable, if no one says sorry, then at the very least, no one should forget. Along the banks of the Kern River, where the water still rushes fast and cold, fresh flowers are laid down every month. Christina's friends gather, not to find answers because many have accepted that justice may never come, but to ensure her memory isn't swept away. Cherish lights a small candle, its flame trembling in the wind. "Christina was always there when we needed her," she whispers. "So now we'll be here for her." Beside her, Stephanie clutches a photo of her friend, her face tight with pain and resolve. Police neither confirm nor deny. Theories still divide the community. Some believe Christina was forced off the road. Others suspect a third person, never questioned. Still others wonder if secrets from her private life led her into danger, but all of it Every theory remains just that, empty space. The one undeniable truth is this. Christina was never found. No funeral. No goodbye. Just a silence, heavy and unrelenting, that hovers over the lives of those who love her. Christina's disappearance isn't just one woman's tragedy. It speaks to a wider grief about the forgotten, the missing, the families who never get closure, and the stories that never make national news. To many, Christina has become a symbol of that injustice. As the sun sets over the Kern River, a friend whispers, "No one was charged, no one apologized, but no one forgot." And now, the final question isn't just for police, it's for us, the ones still listening. What really happened to Christina Murphy? And will justice ever come if we don't demand it together?